Chad Guy Daybell has spent just over 1 year on death row, his fate hanging in the balance. The most chilling detail of his crimes? He buried the bodies of his stepchildren in his own backyard after killing his first wife, their remains hidden while he preached apocalyptic visions to followers. To understand how a small-town author turned into a murderer, driven by twisted beliefs, we must rewind to where it all began. Hit that like button and subscribe to be part of our growing community. Also, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from as we dive into this chilling story. Chad Daybell was born on August 11, 1968 in Provo, Utah, a city steeped in the values of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS. Raised in a devout Mormon family, Chad was the oldest of 5 children born to Jack and Sheila Daybell. His father worked as a school teacher, and his mother managed the home, creating a stable, middle-class environment in Springville, a quiet town just south of Provo. On the surface, Chad's childhood seemed idyllic: family prayers, church activities, and a tight-knit community. But beneath this wholesome facade, subtle cracks hinted at a boy who felt different, even destined for something greater. Growing up, Chad was described as quiet and imaginative, often lost in books or his own thoughts. He excelled in school, particularly in writing, and graduated from Springville High School in 1986. Friends and classmates later recalled him as polite but socially awkward, someone who didn't quite fit in despite his charm. There were no glaring signs of trouble, no arrests, no fights, no obvious red flags. Yet those close to him noted an early fascination with spiritual ideas beyond mainstream LDS teachings. He devoured books on near-death experiences and apocalyptic prophecies, ideas that would later consume him. Chad's family life appeared stable, with no documented abuse or neglect. However, his parents' strict adherence to religious principles may have planted seeds of rigidity in his worldview. By his teens, he began to see himself as a spiritual visionary, a trait that set him apart but also isolated him. After high school, he attended Brigham Young University, BYU, where he studied journalism and graduated in 1992. At BYU, he met Tammy, a kind and outgoing young woman from a strong Mormon family. She caught Chad's eye through shared classes and church activities. They bonded over their faith and dreams of a simple life, leading to a quick courtship. On March 9, 1990, they married in the Manti, Utah Temple, a sacred LDS ceremony that symbolized their commitment. At just 21 years old, Chad seemed ready to build a stable future. Their relationship appeared solid and loving for nearly 3 decades. Tammy supported Chad's ambitions, working as a school librarian to provide steady income while he pursued writing and publishing. They raised 5 children, sons Garth, Seth, and Mark, and daughters Emma and Leah, in Springville, Utah, before moving to Rexburg, Idaho in 2015. Family photos show smiling faces at holidays and church events, but Chad's growing obsession with apocalyptic ideas began to create hidden tensions. He claimed multiple near-death experiences, including visions of the end times, which he wove into his self-published books. Tammy stood by him, even as his beliefs veered from mainstream Mormonism. Friends described her as devoted and hardworking, the glue holding the family together. But was this perfect picture starting to crack under the weight of Chad's evolving delusions? The events leading to Tammy's death unfolded like a dark storm gathering speed. By 2018, Chad had met Lori Vallow at a religious conference in St. George, Utah, sparking an intense affair fueled by shared extremist views. They exchanged passionate emails, rating people on a light and dark scale, and labeling some as zombies, souls possessed by evil spirits that needed to be eliminated. Chad told Lori that Tammy was dark and predicted her death multiple times. In July 2019, Lori's husband, Charles Vallow, was shot dead by her brother, Alex Cox, in what was ruled self-defense. Then in September, Lori's children vanished, but Chad and Lori acted as if nothing was wrong. On October 10, 2019, Tammy reported being attacked in her driveway by a masked man with what she thought was a paintball gun. Prosecutors later argued it was a failed murder attempt by Alex. Just 9 days later, on October 19th, Tammy, 49 and in good health, went to bed early. Chad claimed he found her dead hours later, her body cold and foam at her mouth. He called 911 but declined an autopsy, insisting it was natural causes from her recent fatigue. She was buried quickly in Utah 3 days later. But suspicions grew when Chad collected $430,000 in life insurance. What happened next shocked everyone. Just 17 days after Tammy's death, on November 5, 2019, Chad married Lori Vallow in a beach ceremony in Kauai, Hawaii, complete with matching outfits and rings bought online. They danced and laughed, but police were already asking about Lori's missing kids. After marrying, they moved to Rexburg, living lavishly on insurance money while lying to authorities about the children. But their bliss hid horrors. What extremes would their beliefs push them to next? Chad's relationship with Lori's children, 16-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow, was distant and deadly. Tylee, from Lori's third marriage to Joseph Ryan, was a spirited teen who clashed with her mom's strict rules. J.J., adopted from Charles's family, was autistic and full of energy, needing extra care. Chad barely knew them, but, through his and Lori's teachings, labeled them as zombies. Tylee as a dark spirit named Hillary, and JJ as one too. They saw the kids as obstacles to their divine mission. In September 2019, just before Tammy's death, Tylee was last seen on a Yellowstone trip with Lori, Alex, and JJ. Her body was later found burned and dismembered. JJ vanished 2 weeks later after being given to Alex to watch. Chad helped bury their remains in his backyard pet cemetery, JJ bound in duct tape, Tylee in pieces. Back in Idaho, Chad and Lori lived in a townhouse, hosting podcasts on their apocalyptic views and ignoring welfare checks for JJ and Tylee. When questioned, they lied smoothly. The kids were safe with family in Arizona, but cracks appeared. Lori's brother Alex died mysteriously on December 12, 2019, from what was later ruled natural causes, taking secrets with him. The net tightened as suspicions mounted. In November 2019, JJ's grandmother, Kay Woodcock, reported the children missing after months of unanswered calls. Rexburg police issued a welfare check, but Chad and Lori fled to Hawaii by late November, abandoning their home. Investigators exhumed Tammy's body on December 11, 2019, confirming homicide and linking it to the disappearances. A breakthrough came on June 9, 2020, when a search warrant on Chad's property uncovered the children's remains in the backyard. JJ near a tree, Tylee in the pet cemetery. Chad was arrested that day while trying to drive away, charged initially with concealing evidence. Lori was nabbed in Hawaii on February 20, 2020, for desertion and non-support. As evidence piled up, texts, emails, and witness accounts, Chad faced murder charges in May 2021. His capture wasn't dramatic, but it exposed a web of lies that had fooled many. What drove him to hide in plain sight, and how long could such darkness evade the light? Chaddaybell's web of lies started crumbling from the moment questions arose, but his initial alibis seemed airtight at first glance, crafted to blend normalcy with deception. For his wife Tammy's death on October 19, 2019, Chad claimed it was natural. She had been feeling sick, vomiting, and simply passed in her sleep from health issues like low blood pressure. He even declined an autopsy, insisting no foul play, and buried her quickly in Utah. As for the missing children, JJ and Tylee, Chad and Lori told police and family they were safe with relatives in Arizona, far from Idaho's cold winters. Chad played the concerned stepdad, saying Lori had sent them away for protection amid her custody battles. His defense hinged on portraying himself as a grieving widower and spiritual guide, not a killer, blaming any oddities on his religious beliefs about the end times. But was this facade strong enough to hold against the mounting evidence, or just a thin veil over calculated evil? These alibis unraveled piece by piece, exposed by relentless detective work and hard facts. Tammy's exhumation in December 2019 revealed asphyxiation, not natural causes, disproving Chad's story with toxicology showing no illness, but deliberate smothering. For the kids, welfare checks in November 2019 led to searches, but Chad and Lori fled to Hawaii, raising red flags. The bombshell came on June 9, 2020, when JJ's and Tylee's remains were unearthed in Chad's backyard, directly contradicting their safe in Arizona claim. Digital trails sealed it. Incriminating texts between Chad, Lori, and Alex Cox plotted removing obstacles, rated people on a dark scale, and even celebrated after deaths, like Chad texting Lori about Tammy's death percentage, hitting 99.99% just before she died. Financial records showed Chad cashing in on insurance payouts, motive glaring. Witnesses, including Chad's own children, testified to his strange behavior and lies, turning his defense into dust. How could someone preach about divine visions while hiding such earthly horrors? What does it say about the dangers of unchecked fanaticism? Chad's trial in Boise, Idaho, unfolded like a gripping thriller, packed with emotional highs and shocking revelations from April 1st to May 30th, 2024. Key moments included opening statements where prosecutors painted Chad as a manipulator driven by sex, money, and power, while defense attorneys argued his beliefs were sincere, not criminal. Heart-wrenching testimony from J.R.'s grandparents described their desperate search, tears flowing as they recalled unanswered calls. Chad's daughter Emma took the stand, defending her dad at first but cracking under cross-examination about his affair and prophecies. Digital experts unveiled damning emails and Google searches, like Chad looking up how to make a body decompose faster. A pivotal twist came when Melanie Gibb, a former friend, revealed recordings of Chad and Lori discussing zombies and justifying deaths as mercy. Closing arguments clashed. The state urged justice for the victims. The defense pleaded for doubt. After deliberating just hours on May 30th, 2024, the jury delivered a guilty verdict on all counts: 3 first-degree murders, conspiracy, and insurance fraud, sending shockwaves through the courtroom. But the drama didn't end. The penalty phase loomed, forcing jurors to weigh life or death. 2 days later, on June 1st, 2024, sentencing brought raw emotion as victims' families shared impact statements. JJ's grandpa calling Chad a hollow shell, Tammy's siblings begging for accountability. Chad stayed silent, offering no remorse. The jury, after brief talks, recommended death, which the judge imposed for the murders, plus life for conspiracies. Chad now sits on death row, his appeals just beginning. Lori's separate trial in 2023 mirrored the horror, tried alone after being deemed competent following mental health holds. Her defense claimed insanity from delusions, but prosecutors dismantled it with evidence of calculated schemes. Key moments featured the same chilling texts and witness accounts, plus Lori's eerie courtroom smiles. On May 12, 2023, the jury convicted her of the murders and conspiracies after quick deliberations. Sentencing on July 31, 2023, saw her rant about visions of her happy victims, but the judge slammed 3 life terms without parole, calling her actions heinous. Their fates raised deep questions. Can beliefs ever excuse destruction, or do they reveal our capacity for self-deception? What shadows linger in their story's end? Chaddaybell's life behind bars at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, IMC, near Kuna, Idaho, is a far cry from the rural freedom he once knew. A stark, isolated existence that mirrors the finality of his crimes. Sentenced on June 1, 2024, Chad has spent over 15 months on death row as of September 2025, housed in the prison's J Block, a high-security unit surrounded by double fences, topped with razor wire and patrolled 24/7. IMSI, opened in 1989, holds about 535 of Idaho's most dangerous inmates, including other notorious killers like Thomas Creech and Gerald Pizzuto. Conditions here are harsh. Reports describe dirty ventilation systems, limited mental health care, and past complaints of abusive guards and feces-covered recreation areas. For death row inmates like Chad, it's even more restrictive. Up to 23 hours a day alone in a small cell, with meals eaten solo, showers only 3 times a week, and minimal human contact to prevent violence. No prison jobs or education programs, just endless hours in solitude. How does a man who once led a doomsday cult cope with such emptiness? And what does it reveal about the human need for connection, even in guilt? Chad's behavior in prison shows little sign of the charismatic author he once was. He spends his days writing letters, which he shares on a website called Letters from Chad, launched in August 2025. These unfiltered and uncensored writings detail his thoughts on his murdered first wife, Tammy, and Lori's children, JJ and Tylee, often framing his life on death row in a shocking, self-focused way. Madison County Sheriff Ron Ball called it a con, suggesting Chad is still manipulating people from his cell. No public remorse has emerged. Chad hasn't expressed regret in court or letters, instead clinging to his apocalyptic beliefs that justified the killings. He hasn't publicly found new religion. His faith was always extreme, and it seems to persist, perhaps fueling his writings as a way to maintain influence. Appeals are underway. His lawyer filed an initial challenge with the Idaho Supreme Court days after sentencing, questioning the death penalty. The deadline for post-conviction relief was extended to October 15, 2024, and as of September 2025, his team has more time to build the case. Interactions with guards and inmates are limited by design. Death row keeps him isolated to avoid risks, but the environment breeds tension, with past reports of vulgar harassment toward new arrivals. In this void, Chad's letters become his outlet, raising questions. Can isolation force change, or does it just harden the delusions that led him here? Chad's relationship with his 5 adult children, Garth, Seth, Mark, Emma, and Leah, adds a layer of complexity to his prison life. Raised in a tight-knit Mormon family, they stood by him during the trial. Emma and Garth testified in his defense, describing him as a loving dad and downplaying his odd beliefs. Emma, now living in the family home near Rexburg with her husband, spoke of her mother's light and dark ratings, echoing Chad's views. Post-conviction, the bond appears strained but not broken. Some children have visited him, according to family updates, grappling with grief over their mother's murder while holding on to memories of their father. It's a heartbreaking divide. How do you reconcile love for a parent with the horror of his actions? This ongoing connection highlights the ripple effects of crime, leaving his kids to navigate public scrutiny and personal loss. At 57 years old in 2025, Chad could live for decades more. Idaho's death row inmates often wait 20 to 30 years or longer before execution, if it happens at all. The state has carried out only 3 executions since 1977, the last in 2012, with appeals dragging on amid legal challenges and botched attempts, like the failed lethal injection of Thomas Creech in February 2024. Starting July 2026, firing squad becomes the primary method, but shortages of drugs and court delays persist. Chad might die of natural causes in his 80s, enjoying years of meals, letters, and visits. Contrast that with his victims. Tammy at 49, full of life as a librarian and mom. Tylee at 16, dreaming of her future. JJ at 7, robbed of childhood hugs and play. This disparity forces us to reflect. Does a long life in prison truly balance the scales for those cut short so unfairly? In the end, Chaddaybell's story is a chilling reminder of how twisted beliefs can destroy innocence, leaving only echoes of pain. Was justice truly served in this case? Or does the slow grind of death row raise bigger questions about mercy, redemption, and the cost of capital punishment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? If this gripped you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into true crime stories.